Before we begin today's episode, a brief content warning. Today we will be looking at two Season 5 episodes, The Post-Modern Prometheus and A Christmas Carol. In the first of these episodes, please be aware that there is depiction of rape and sexual abuse. In the second of these episodes, there is a depiction of suicide. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Things Are Getting Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And we have news!
We do.
We thought we'd missed it, but it turns out we're actually a year early, so that's good.
It was something I saw on Twitter earlier today, in fact. But yeah, there's another X-Files novel coming in July of next year.
Aha, and what is this one about?
It is actually a canonical, I believe, at least it's Chris Carter approved, continuation of Season 11.
Oh no! I should say that, but oh no!
Oh, I know your feelings towards that season. But yeah, from what I read, it sounds like it is going to be mythos-based. It follows Mulder and Scully as they prepare to become parents. Sorry, that's a bit of a spoiler for Season 11. But also as they are encouraged to reopen the X-Files to investigate a couple of murders, one seeming to involve someone who can control electricity, and one involving someone who disappears from the scene in a puff of smoke. But it also then inferred the fact that the opening of the X-Files also led to the kind of a neo-syndicate kind of being formed, so we're getting into the conspiracy again there.
Surely somebody's getting tired of the FBI of, you reopened the X-Files again.
Yeah.
Can we just go and burn the files? I mean, it'd be easier, wouldn't it, than investigating this. Oh well. But anyway, so a new book. That's interesting. Personal preference would be to drop some of those elements and maybe just do the Monster of the Week thing, but oh well.
Yeah, I guess like the old adult novels were all kind of Monster of the Week stories.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting when we can get back to those over on Patreon, just because they're written so early and there is no conspiracy to work off of, so they have to be standalone.
Yeah. I seem to remember they're kind of varied in quality as well, but some of them I kind of remember quite fondly, like Ground Zero.
Yes, I mean, I think I remember Gods. I remember bits of Goblins, and I remember bits of Whirlwind, and then not a whole lot else.
The two I read religiously because I owned them were Ground Zero and Ruin, which I quite enjoyed, though Ruin would never work as an actual episode.
And both Kevin J. Anderson.
Yeah, personally I remember preferring Kevin J. Anderson's ones, but I guess we'll see when we get to them on the Patreon.
And then we've got the young adult ones to deal with as well.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't think I ever gave the title, but the book, as I say, it's coming out July next year. I couldn't really find anywhere online where you can pre-order it yet, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on Amazon. But it's called Perihelion, and it's by Claudia Gray, who a bit of research on Twitter tells me she's a New York Times bestselling author. She writes a lot of Star Wars tie-ins and things like that as well, but she was also once an X-Files fanfic writer under a pen name. I have actually read some of her YA work before. I did enjoy that, so at least that's a good sign.
Yeah, it just goes to show that, all these people who say don't do fanfic if you want to be a real author, there's nothing actually stopping you getting there.
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on this. As soon as I can pre-order it, I will get my hands. I like a bedtime read.
In the meantime, though, I think we're going to have to go to a different kind of fiction.
A science fiction?
Double feature. I was going to say a comic. Let's go have a look at the comic.
Yeah, I suppose we have got a bit of a comic theme in this episode.
So first up this week, we watched the Post-Modern Prometheus. Directed by Chris Carter, written by Chris Carter, and first broadcast on the 30th November 1997. Guest stars: C. Ernest Haas played the Huge Man. He was in 13 Ghosts.
Which one?
He was the big child.
Oh, the Great Child.
The Great Child.
The new 13 Ghosts.
The new 13 Ghosts, yeah, not the the new one. He was also in Dreamcatcher, unfortunately.
Oh dear.
And Trick or Treat.
Oh, I like Trick or Treat.
I know. But the big one, and apparently fan of the X-Files, and one who wanted a guest spot and was not allowed to until this episode, is John O'Hurley, who plays Dr. Francis Polidori, who's had quite the track record. I mean, he's done films, but none of them I've actually seen, so let's stick to TV, where he was in Baywatch.
Oh.
He was in Frasier. He was in Baywatch Nights as a completely different character.
Okay.
fact, he was in Baywatch twice, and then Baywatch Nights, and no consistency there at all. He was in Seinfeld, of course, as Mr. Peterman, the slightly insane head of the catalogue.
It goes slowly into the heart of darkness as it goes on.
Yeah, but then he comes out of the heart of darkness and just takes over again. We like Peterman. He was, of course, in SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes.
And in the video games. Sabrina the Teenage Witch. The semi-obscure Father of the Pride, where he played Blake the White Lion.
He's a white tiger.
White Tiger, sorry, yes. Blake the White Tiger. The rogue KGB agent.
He is a rogue KGB agent.
You have a lovely home. He was in The Emperor's New School.
Okay.
Which I still never managed to track down. He was in Gravity Falls.
Yes, he is.
And he's in Fable 2, of all things.
Okay. I do love him. He's a great actor.
He is.
So, do you have a synopsis for this one?
Oh, I do. Okay. The episode comes in the form of a comic book, which opens to reveal Mulder receiving a letter from Shania Berkowitz, a single mother who claims to have been impregnated while unconscious by an unknown presence 18 years ago, resulting in the birth of her son, Izzy. Now, following a similar unexplained attack, she is pregnant again. She has heard about Mulder's expertise in the paranormal from The Jerry Springer Show and wants him to investigate after he talked about a wolf child. Mulder and Scully travel to rural Albion, Indiana. They meet Shania and her son Izzy and learn the description of the creature that attacked her with a lumpy head and two mouths is very similar to a comic book character invented by Izzy. This creation is called the Great Mutato and is inspired by a mysterious creature that has been seen by many of the locals. Izzy and his friends accompany the agents to a wooded area where they place a peanut butter sandwich and lure the Great Mutato out, where they see him from a distance. Pursuing him into the woods, Mulder and Scully encounter an old man who angrily tells them there are no monsters and sends them to see his son, a geneticist named Francis Polidori. Dr. Polidori shows them his experiments studying the Hox gene using the fruit fly Drosophila. This presentation includes images of a mutated fly whose legs are growing out of its mouth. He tells the agents that the same kind of experiment could, in theory, be performed on humans. Afterward, Mulder tells Scully that he believes Polidori, acting as a postmodern Victor Frankenstein, has created the Great Mutato. Later, Dr. Polidori's wife Elizabeth is knocked unconscious and attacked in the same manner as Shania. While leaving town, Mulder and Scully spot the tented structure which is used for fumigation and conclude this is why Shania was missing for 3 days without anyone noticing. At the scene, Mulder and Scully find a chemical residue from an agriculture agent used to anesthetize animals after being rendered unconscious. This leads them to suspect Dr. Polidori's father, who is a farmer. Dr. Polidori comes to his father's house and confronts him and murders him. Later, the Mutato, who lives with Polidori Sr., finds his dead body and tearfully buries it in the barn. Mulder and Scully go looking for Polidori Sr. and find a shallow grave and photographs of the dead man with Mutato. Meanwhile, Dr. Polidori leads an angry mob of townspeople to his father's house, demanding that Mulder and Scully turn the alleged murderer over to them. The agents find Mutato hiding in the basement as the crowd gathers upstairs. Someone accidentally sets the barn alight, and in the ensuing confusion, the mob realize the agents are protecting the monster in the basement. Mutato speaks to the crowd and explains that he was created 25 years before, and is the result of a genetic experiment by Dr. Polidori. Unbeknownst to his son, Polidori Sr. rescued Mutato and cared for him, but was unable to provide a friend or mate for the boy. The old man attempted to emulate his scientist son's experiments and tried to create hybrids from his farm animals. Mutato asks Dr. Polidori to create a female companion for him, but the scientist says that he cannot, that Mutato was a mistake. Townspeople realize the Great Mutato is not a monster at all, and Dr. Polidori is arrested for the murder of his father. Mulder feels it is unjust for Mutato not to get a mate, so he demands to see the writer. In a fanciful, if not imagined scene, Mulder and Scully take matters into their own hands and take Mutato along with the townspeople to a Cher concert.
Is that what you want to end this?
I'm just going about comic panels, but what's even the point? So
this is a critically acclaimed, Emmy-winning episode that is an absolute fan favourite.
Yes, and in a startling turn of events, though I will agree with you, would you like to start tearing it to pieces?
Yes, I hate it. And I don't use that word loosely with the X-Files. It is reserved for syzygy in this.
That's fair. I think there's a few other ones we can also sort of point fingers at. Excelsior's Day and the like.
Yeah, I don't like Excelsior's Day either.
And it's really frustrating because there's some wonderful parts of this episode is just tainted.
It's much like it's a lot like my argument about small potatoes, though I think this episode is worse. But it's so salvageable and it could be so good, but I hate the central premise of it.
Yes, I mean, to not to quibble about it, the central premise is about rape, and the only wiggle room you've got is if this is medical or just outright assault.
It is left unclear and it's kind of ambiguous, particularly because towards the end, it's kind of inferred by what Mutato says that Old Man Polidori made animal-human hybrids before this second wave of rapes, which is what resulted in Izzy. This was Shania's first experience 18 years prior, and Izzy is some kind of human-pig hybrid, which is just surreal. But from that, it's unclear if it's Mutato actually raping the women or if it's Old Man Polidori. But my problem with that is Mutato is still culpable because he's intelligent.
Yep.
If you'd had Mutato was not articulate intelligent, which he is because it's like the creature in Frankenstein, I would not have so much of a problem with this premise because you would argue he was an innocent.
Yeah. But no. And the episode is really hedging its bets, given that all the build-up seems to imply Mutato is actually sneaking into these people's houses and gassing them. And then raping them. And then you get Dr. Polidori's wife, who I don't think is even named Elizabeth in the episode, but...
Interesting Elizabeth for another Frankenstein illusion there
yeah.
as well.
I mean, I think we'll do the Frankenstein bit in a...
There's
a lot
of references to Frankenstein.
But it's... When that one happens, it's... Because this is where the confusion happens, because if it is just Mutato doing it, why is Polidori Sr. there to pick up Mulder and Scully in a gas mask when they sort of fall unconscious?
Mm.
And yeah, and the episode also, as you said, hedges his bets right up until the last second because we don't know the Mutato can actually speak until he does.
No, it's much like, well, one of the big inspirations are obviously the 1931 Frankenstein, in which the monster isn't articulate anyway. He learns to speak in The Bride of Frankenstein. So therefore, yeah, we're kind of assuming it's going this way and you've got the monster that can just kind of grunt and roar.
No, but he's probably capable of talking, though. He doesn't talk to his dad earlier in the episode for no good reason.
No, he just kind of grunts.
Yeah, so... Sure. Chris, what are you doing? I mean, this is territory we keep going back to on the X-Files, and somehow this wasn't seen as a bad thing in the 90s. But then, as you've looked at all the things, and this episode keeps coming up very near the top of best episodes list.
Yeah, people often put it in top 10s. I even read one, I don't want to use the term supposedly, but supposedly feminist reviewer at the time, whose name escapes me, it was a woman, arguing the fact that to dismiss this as a rape story is oversimplifying. It's like, no, I'm going to go with the Brooklyn Nine-Nine of cool story, still rape.
Yes.
To be honest. And the bit that really grinds me in the episode is the bit right after Elizabeth is attacked, where she's inconsolable, in tears, she knows she's been assaulted, and then Scully suggests she might be pregnant, and she immediately stops crying and grins. It's like, no, this is not how it works.
No.
It's not rape is excused so long as I'm pregnant. I know she had the whole subplot of wanting to get pregnant, but, there are annoyances here.
Well, what's struck me about that, just as you said that, is this is terrible for her as a character. I mean, I know she barely exists as a character in this anyway. She is basically just there as an excuse to have another Cher song play out. What are the two Cher songs? There
are 3 in the entire episode.
Yeah, but it's the excuse to have those 2 Cher songs back to back when the Mutato comes in and when Mulder and Scully into the house.
Yeah.
Is if she is that desperate for a child, which, okay, and apparently just wants a child, doesn't count on the father, why has she not gone for in vitro fertilization?
Yeah, or even adopted or something like that.
Have an affair. There are ways of doing this.
That do not involve rape.
Yes. But the fact that apparently this is her sole motivation thing was wanting to have a child via any vector.
We've noted before that X-Files often does a disservice to its female kind of, to use the term NPCs because I've been playing too many video games later, it's kind of female support characters.
Yeah.
The one that this kept making me think of, and it's a complete tangent, but is Miracle Man, where you have the detective's wife in that who has the crippling arthritis, and she should be the true victim of the story because when, because of her husband's actions, the miracle man, the faith healer, is killed off, it means that she'll never be cured, and she'll essentially be paralyzed in agony for her entire life. Yet we don't see her after a point in the plot. We don't explore this. We don't show what suffering it causes this woman. It's all about her husband.
Yeah.
And in the same sense, this is all about Dr. Polidori and the Great Mutato, is we kind of totally ignore Elizabeth.
Yeah, and I'd say this is actually possibly even worse than Miracle Man, because at least that was framed as a tragedy if you were paying attention. Whereas this is, she happily goes on Jerry Springer at the end, along with Shania.
What's not to love about my rape baby?
Yeah, it's a sort of,
Yeah, the ending as well with... I know we can easily argue this is like Izzy's fictionalized comic book ending for it, from the way it's framed. And, you know, the Mutato doesn't get this happy ending at the Cher concert and all the rest of it. But it's kind of rewarding him for rape. At least Eddie Blunt in Small Potatoes gets punished.
Yes.
The Mutato gets to go to a party!
Yeah, I think ultimately how, if pushed, they'd come down on, say, none of the episode happened. This is Izzy's comic book, because it's framed as going into the comic in the first place. He's got Mulder and Scully from somewhere, or maybe there was an investigation he actually ran into in some capacity. Everything's fictitious.
Well, they say at the start that Shania got Mulder's name off Jerry Springer, so it could be that Mulder was mentioned on Jerry Springer and that's where Izzy's heard his name.
Yeah.
And used him as a character in his comic.
To be fair, it feels also implausible that Mulder would have his name mentioned on Jerry Springer and not be fired for this one as well.
After also appearing under a pseudonym in all those publications and all the rest of it.
And all the other ones. I mean, it puts me more in mind of The Extraterrestrial's Guide to the X-Files, because that book's spin on Mulder is actually closer to how he seemed to be presented in this episode, where he's just a dangerous loose cannon who people know about in some capacity. And that's kind of how he comes across, just with how he's been mentioned. I did realise, though, when we talk about it, is this whole, and I know there's no point in distinguishing between Mutato raping people and his father raping people medically. But Shania is a weird one where she shouldn't be able to get pregnant, and yet she is.
Yeah, that's a good point. We never explain why she gets pregnant when she's had a tubal ligation, I think, previously.
And that still points more to it being his father doing the troublesome stuff than Mutato, unless Mutato don't want to get into about how that biology is going to work. Because that's just creepy and weird. We don't want that.
It's interesting that the basis of this episode is based on scientific fact. I found in my researches the previous experiment that Polidori talks about with the Hox gene and manipulating flies to grow legs where they shouldn't have legs. That was actually an experiment. It was a colleague of the X-Files' science advisor of the time that she put Chris Carter onto this colleague because he'd done a similar experiment where by genetic manipulation they caused flies to grow legs in the place of eyes. So as surreal and sci-fi as it sounds, that's our kind of scientific basis for the episode that is grounded.
Yes. Well, I am vaguely aware of this because it is a thing you do in biology and genetics, is because the fruit fly is very well understood and very simple. Is you can get away with doing that kind of gene manipulation on them.
Feels mean.
It is. It's one of these whole disparities. It's like lab rats and lab mice and all the rest of it, is that they don't consider them animals per se. They're creating them purely to do these weird things to them.
Insects cool. Especially so.
Yeah. I know you have more sympathy for insects than most people.
Yeah, I love bugs. I keep beetles myself, and it just feels horribly, horribly cruel.
Yeah, I think it's because of the short-lived nature of the fruit fly as well, as they don't last very long, do they?
No, but there are studies that show that insects feel pain.
Yes. I mean, it's like all animal testing is, to some certain point, unethical and also deeply cruel.
Yeah, but I feel you've got more of an argument for testing medicines to ensure they're safe than genetically modifying something to be kind of born crippled.
Yes, or just be absolutely wrecked, rendered unnatural.
Yeah.
So we've got the big beef of the episode out of the way, and there's basically it's fatal to the episode. I mean, it's not going to appear in either of our top episode lists for the season.
Absolutely not.
It's it's catastrophic. I mean, I am kind of bewildered by all the people who could put it to one side that this is the central premise, and you are overlooking the problem with it. Because it's not a problem that Frankenstein has.
No. As we noted in the episode, it's our analogy is Adam, the creature in Frankenstein. We kind of compare the Mutato to him because Mutato is very clearly inspired by him. and I'm not going to say it's the worst he does because it's still atrocious, but over the course of the story, the creature kills a few people, one of which is a small child.
Yeah.
He never rapes anyone, and indeed, he never gets his mate.
No. Until the film sequel, anyway.
If we were basing it on
No,
the
we'll go
films,
out to Mary Shelley.
if you're going to Mary Shelley's book, which is the Modern Prometheus, which is what we've nicked the title from, is in Mary Shelley's book, which I studied at length when I was at university because I studied Gothic literature. Our story takes place as Victor Frankenstein becomes obsessed with creating life after a slew of tragedies, which includes things like his mother's death. He creates a creature out of choice parts that he has selected from cadavers, which he therefore has selected each part individually to be beautiful, which when he's stoned them all together has made something that's grotesque and 8 foot tall and looks like a shambling corpse. So he immediately panics and abandons it, leaving this thing that essentially has the mentality of an infant to kind of discover the world, realise that no one's ever going to be kind to him, and ultimately start to kind of learn. And he, of course, learns from only the most gothic of novels like Paradise Lost and The Inferno and things like that, to which he kind of realises that he's a monster and he'll always be alone unless his creator does the good thing and makes him a friend, or a mate, as it puts it. So through essentially torturing Victor by keeping killing off his brother and other loved ones, the creature makes clear that its final victim will be Victor's fiancée if Victor does not give him a mate, which Victor starts to build and then gets cold feet and destroys it, leading to the death of his fiancée, and ultimately a chase across the Arctic Circle where Victor's trying to catch up to the monster and kill it, but ultimately dies before he can do so. So that's Frankenstein in a nutshell.
And if you want a better comedic version of that, Bitter Corella has released the first episode of The Midnight Pals, which is Mary Shelley telling her version of Frankenstein, which deviates quite significantly at various points off from that synopsis.
But for some of our references in this episode as well, you've got Polidori's going to give a lecture at the University of Ingolstadt, which is where Frankenstein kind of makes the thing. You've got Elizabeth's name. Elizabeth is Frankenstein's fiancée. You've got Polidori himself, is named after Dr. John Polidori, who famously Frankenstein was written as part of a bet between Mary Shelley, her husband Percy, Lord Byron.
Lord Byron, no!
And Dr. Polidori. So we've named it after one of the other people involved in that. Then you've got the general black and white framing and the shouting of "It's alive!" and the kind of fairy tale gothic soundtrack, which will lead back to the Boris Karloff 1931 film, which is exceptionally good and you really should watch it.
It's just a shame that it's all in support of this flawed premise. Because, I mean, we've got some great comedic moments from everyone. Like John O'Hurley as Dr. Polidori, who actually, I think, comes out of this, aside from being a miserable husband to his wife and murdering his father, obviously, isn't involved in the rape stuff, though.
No, he's a deeply unethical scientist.
He is.
But doesn't rape anyone.
But that makes him so much more enjoyable to watch in this episode, because he's doing the absolute mad scientist thing.
Yeah, you've got him on the level of literary Victor Frankenstein in the fact that he's created this monster and essentially abandoned it.
Yeah.
And, he believes that the great Mutato is dead. He doesn't know his father's taken him on and raised him as a son.
Yeah.
With, I guess, therefore, Old Man Polidori's closest equivalent in the book would be the blind man who befriends the monster.
Yes.
Briefly, until his children chase the monster away.
You've got all the gothic intonations, like the lightning striking whenever Dr. Polidori is speaking, and the "Why did you do this?" "Because I can." Great stuff. And Mulder and Scully getting knocked out by the gas, which you said, not sure why they decided to run into a house full of smoke and not expect to go keel over.
They must know that that's what the gas is for as well.
But it's great to watch them hungover when they're sort of recovered later on.
One of my favourite framing devices in the episode, to give it its due, is the scene set in the diner.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
you have two separate times that are almost identical when Mulder goes for breakfast in the diner. And the first one is where he first comes onto the case and he's like the local celebrity and everyone loves him. And the chef who tells him, "Oh, remember my name's JJ with 2 J's," who's giving him breakfast for free. And the second time where everyone just scowls at him as he enters and like the waitress pours coffee directly into his lap and things like that. All juxtaposed with Scully reading the newspaper and seeing the two headlines. One's like, FBI agents investigate local monster, and the second is FBI agents declare monster a hoax. It's good fun. It's really, really nicely shot and well framed.
Oh yeah, and again, it's the deep tragedy of the episode is that if you didn't have this fundamental premise, we wouldn't have the problem with it. And we would say, this is a great episode of the X-Files. It's funny.
Apparently, it was an original thing with the X-Files. Is they originally said they were always going to use kind of unrecognized actors, new and upcoming ones, people without names. And this was one of the first points where they kind of deviated from that because John Hurley is a really well-established actor.
Yeah.
And also, Shania's character was written for Roseanne Barr, but due to scheduling conflicts, they couldn't get her. So this was going to be like our first big-name actor episode.
Yeah. Weird enough, that came up for the film, and there's like two of the new characters for the film were well-established actors. One of them I didn't recognise at all.
Oh, okay.
The other is Martin Landau.
Yeah, I remember Martin Landau being in it. And I think the second film gets Billy Connolly.
Yes, the second one does get Billy Connolly.
I mean, from this point, we do get some other X-Files episodes with big actors. I think when we get to Fight Club, it's Kathy Griffin, and there's definitely a Burt Reynolds episode somewhere in there.
Most people would say, if you said at the start, yeah, Burt Reynolds is going to cameo in an episode of The X-Files, you'd say, oh, you must be kidding. Also, if we said what role he gets, no.
I really look forward to getting to that one, but that's an aside.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one again.
But yeah, this is kind of the start of us actually getting a peppering of very well-known actors in there. Because, X-Files is really taken off by this point.
Yes, not people who have become famous later on, as we've had a few of.
Yeah. I did notice, on a tangent, I was watching Final Destination the other day, and it's amazing in the first Final Destination how many people you get who are either former X-Files actors or will go on to be X-Files actors. Ranging from Pusher to the kid from Hungary to Tony Todd.
Yeah. Well, I think, wasn't Final Destination like 1999, 2000-ish?
Can't remember when it aired. I remember seeing it when I was a teenager.
Yeah, so I think most of them have been on the X-Files, and this was afterwards.
Yeah, I reckon it would be before Hungry and the likes of that. I'd say Final Destination was before Season 6.
When's Final Destination come out? Because Season 6 is 1999.
2000.
So Hungary's first.
No, you're right.
So what you're saying is that Morgan Wong basically just took everyone they found in Vancouver and made Final Destination.
Yeah, basically.
Because even Who's a Face from a Field Where I Died is in Final Destination.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think of her. But yeah.
Ali Larter, on the other hand, I don't think made it into the X-Files. El Stifler.
Yeah, that's true. I don't even know Stifler's actor name. He's just always Stifler.
Which was a problem when he was in Southland Tales anyway.
But also, in really big names for this episode, you get Jerry Springer playing himself, which at the time was huge.
It was. Unlike Alex Trebek, his Wikipedia page does not list his individual appearances.
Oh, really?
There is no table of what he's been in. It's just a general article of times when he has appeared as himself.
It shows how big it was, though, because even the Werewolf Baby thing is filmed specifically for the X-Files, so you even got Jerry in filming these fake Jerry Springer episodes for it.
Yeah. And again, weirdly, this is like 2 years before Austin Powers 2 when they also did that.
Oh, yeah.
So this is predates Austin Powers' Spy Who Shagged Me, where they also did the fake Jerry Springer episode.
I think it's because it's so recognisable. You can parody Jerry Springer so easily, and everyone recognises it as a parody of Jerry Springer.
Yeah, it puts me in mind a bit of how that's changed because remember at UHF they've got a completely different talk show with over-the-top guests like that.
Yeah.
I think it's Geraldo is what they're spoofing.
Yeah. But you get this thing, and I don't know if it's still a thing in America, but we don't really have talk shows in the UK. I mean, there was that huge scandal with Jeremy Kyle, and after that they seem to have died.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get the daytime talk shows in the same way. The tabloid talk shows.
Yeah, everyday people coming to talk about their relationship issues and probably have a lie detector test.
Yeah.
Because, we used to have Trisha and Jeremy Kyle and that sort of thing. But, following the aforementioned scandal, they all seem to have started dying off.
Yeah, there's certainly nothing on the level of Jerry Springer has cropped up. I mean, if it's going on, it's not got that level of notoriety. Because somehow Jerry Springer was a known factor over here, despite the fact I don't think we got it.
We must have got Jerry
Well,
on
no,
some
it would have been
channel.
it would have been on a Sky channel. If you were stuck on terrestrial stuff, you were not going to see that.
No, we just had our kind of watered down English equivalents.
Yeah, which then took most of their cues, but could never go to the same extreme.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else for this episode?
Probably have loads. I mean, you haven't even mentioned Cher.
Apparently, she I don't know if she still likes it, was a big fan of the X-Files at the time.
No, I believe it was her sister was a huge
Oh, her
X-Files
sister,
fan.
okay.
So the producers of the show contacted her through her sister to ask if she'd like a cameo. And Cher's question, because I actually heard this a different way. I heard that she just kind of turned it down because she wasn't a fan. But the actual story was Cher was interested, but at the time, this is following on because we see Mask in the episode, is Cher did have a background in acting.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, will I be able to act on the show?" And they said, "No, no, no, we just want you to sing." So Cher wasn't interested because basically she didn't want to appear and just be herself. She wanted more of a role. And therefore, instead, they got a really famous celebrity impersonator to just be Cher from the back, performing on stage for the Mutato at the end. And after Cher saw it and saw how, beautifully shot this episode is and things, she ultimately regretted her decision to turn this down.
Yeah. One of the things where you wanted to say, okay, it would have been cool to be in it. I would have said, please rewrite the script.
Yeah, that's a good point. But Cher did at least give permission for them to use the 3 songs in it, of which Walking in Memphis is the kind of most iconic one right at the end.
Is there only 3? I thought there wasn't.
No, there's 3. It's The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine,
Okay.
Walking in Memphis, and Tramps and Thieves are the 3 songs that appear.
Fair enough. Possibly want to retitle one of those.
I'm sorry, it's the name of the song.
Well, yeah, I can't do anything about that, but no, it's interesting that the X-Files doesn't do a lot of recognizable songs. I mean, is it basically been this and the Red Right Hand is basically what we've had?
Wonderful, Wonderful.
Oh, wonderful. That was a cover, though, I suppose.
It
Specifically
was
for them.
because they couldn't get permission to use the song.
But then of actual just known pop songs, I think it's these 3 and Red Right Hand and a cover version of Wonderful, Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's kind of surreal, isn't it? How much of your budget went on just licensing Cher songs?
Well, it's interesting you should say that because the Great Mutato's prosthetics cost $40,000.
Oof. And we should note, because I'm pretty sure I brought it up before, that's Chris Owens under that makeup again.
Young cigarette smoking man.
Young cigarette smoking man is still around.
He's unrecognizable.
Puts me in mind of Ted Raimi in Evil Dead 2.
Yeah, I can see that. His inspiration was the Elephant Man.
I can see that too.
But yeah, the prosthetic is really, really elaborate, although it took 7 hours to apply, and Chris Owens could only see out of one eye because he had big, thick contact lenses and dentures and everything else in there. It also included a kind of separate set of working mandible jaws for the kind of co-joined head.
Okay.
And the woman who created it also created 2 baby mutatos for the babies to wear in the Jerry Springer show at the end.
Okay.
Those are actually babies under there, and they had a devil of a job keeping the costumes on because the babies just kept pulling the fake hair out and things like that.
Given how little you see of them, just give them 2 dummies to hold. I don't think we need to have
Yeah, I didn't even realise those were actually babies.
No,
yeah, they are.
Pointless.
Babies wearing prosthetics. But it's a really, really cool outfit. It might be in part that it's helped by the episode being shot in black and white, so it hides a lot, makes it look a lot better. And apparently was a learning curve for their lighting technician who had to work even harder for this episode.
Yeah, that puts me in mind of, you get those anecdotes about the Addams Family in the 60s, and how if you see the colour photos of the set, it looks nothing like you expected to, because it's
pink.
It's pink. It's got a lot of very vivid colours that translate to black and white in a certain way.
Well, you also have the interesting things that you misremember, like the Boris Karloff Frankenstein being green when actually he's grey.
Yeah. I think he's green on the poster, but he's never green on film, is he?
Yeah, because they had to paint him in like shades of grey so it showed up right in the black and white.
Exactly. Which I think also came up with the H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society's version of Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, the silent movie one.
Yeah, where there's in the featurettes, there's a whole thing about how garish some of the costumes were, but knowing they were doing it into black and white, that sort of had the specific effect of what it does.
Yeah, of course.
Which is very cool.
But yeah, that prosthesis, think of how little budget we had in the first season of The X-Files. It kind of shows how we've come along.
It does. I mean, I was also wondering there, as much as The Elephant Man is a influence, God, I wonder if Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has had a factor there.
From the kind of dignity the Great Mutato has when he eventually speaks, you're definitely seeing the portrayal of John Merrick from the Elephant Man film in there.
I've never seen Emmett Till, that is John Hurt, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And David Lynch, of all people.
Yeah, it's a really, really good film, to be fair. Apparently, Chris Owens in Audition aped that a bit too closely, which prompted a very un-PC comment about how autistically he was playing the character from Chris Carter. He was told to reel it in.
Every time I learn a new thing about Chris Carter, it's a case of, oh, you're just making things worse for yourself.
Yeah, I thought whoa for a moment when I read that one.
Oh, again, 90s different acceptability
But we know
things.
the X-Files hasn't been very sensitive on autistic people either, from Elegy and Roland.
No. And its curse is going to carry on forwards. Do you ever regret doing this podcast?
I know, right? We've got to get to Bad Blood eventually, right?
Soon, it's coming soon. Get to Bad Blood.
But yeah, I think the Post-Modern Prometheus is my biggest disappointment with the X-Files so far, just because I want to like it, I want it to be great. It's based on a fantastic story that has endured the test of time and is very well known, very beloved. And they turn it into the least sensitive, least kind of aware episode of the X-Files of the lot, I think.
Yes. And there is a comment from Chris Carter that basically the conspiracy was going to get very heavy, so they wanted stuff to lighten things up.
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense. And yeah, you tried. You just fell over yourself at the last second.
I think, can we bring back Darren Morgan, to be honest, because he got the comedy episodes and they seem to struggle to emulate his writing.
Yeah, well, at this point, I don't think he's even on Millennium anymore. He was, I don't know, Darren Morgan's actual career is actually really weird when you look at the Wikipedia entry, because he hasn't actually done that much. Weirdly sort of just nailing it on these in single instances, the X-Files and Millennium, and then just vanishing off into the ether again. But yes, it would be better if he was back. And I do wonder, in the back of someone's mind, if they were worried about the content of the episode, and hence the comic book framing to give them the get out clause that no, it's Izzy's fantasy. Blame him. Of course, that still reflects badly on the writer, because the writer's still the one who's doing all the
Framing things like that is always a bit cheap as well. It's
absolutely
a bit like Indie Musings of the Cigarette Smoking Man, where fans weren't happy that they couldn't necessarily sit this within canon. Is again, we have this for this one, which is weird that this one's beloved, is the fact that we can easily remove it from canon and say, no, that's just Izzy's comic book.
Exactly. Well, I still think, though, Musings was better because the framing wasn't fictitious. The framing was an actual meeting between Mulder and Scully and the Lone Gunman. Whether the content of the episode happened or not is a debatable point. The whole thing is framed as a comic.
I also think is one of the things that makes it less convincing as being Izzy's comic is Izzy's very self-depreciating to himself in it. If you were a kind of teenage boy writing a comic, would you make yourself this kind of dim-witted character who's pushed around by his mother and ultimately turns out to be a pig-human hybrid?
No, that's the kind of thing you do in your 30s.
Yeah, when you're a teenager, Izzy would be the hero.
Yeah.
He'd save the day.
So yeah, that doesn't track from that perspective.
There's one last thing I think we should note as well, is possibly the reason fans like this episode so much.
Oh, the dancing.
The dance,
the
yeah.
dancing.
Which was also supposed to originally be scripted as a kiss.
Of course it was. I mean, this would be... Is this like the second kiss they've aborted in this series?
Again, Chris Carter thought it was too much, so you just have that nice final moment where Mulder gets up and invites Scully to dance.
Which, Shippers, I do apologise, but this is the least Mulder thing I could think of for that character.
I think following on as well, at least it's maybe he feels sorry for detours where he refused Scully's offering of wine and cheese.
But yeah, I mean, it's nice. The shared content was still, the foundation is still cracked, as nice as it is.
If you change the central premise, as we've noted, Frankenstein is not centered around rape.
No.
It's a deeply kind of sexual story. It's all about childbirth and the role of the woman and things like that, but it is not about rape. And so we could have easily changed the core premise of this, to, much like we could with Small Potatoes, to make it palatable in some way.
Yeah.
And if we had, this would be an absolute top-tier episode.
Yes. I've also, sorry, just realised the other thing I was going to say before, and it's a bit weird.
Oh, yeah.
We've got the rape as the big stumbling block for the episode.
Mm-hmm.
We're not sure if it's medical or if it's actual sexual assault. Still bad. We're just not going to talk about how the townspeople apparently accept that.
Yep.
Cool, shouldn't do that, but just bear with me for a second here. So, the Great Mutato and or Polidori Sr.
Mm-hmm.
stuck into the house in the middle of the night. put this chemical in their frying pan and set it alight,
Yeah.
gassed the inhabitants of the house, put fumigation tarpaulins over the outside. The great mutato then spends, regardless of what happens to the women, he then spends 3 days living in their house, eating all their peanut butter, rifling through all their belongings, watching all their movies, listening to all their CDs, singing on tape recorders. So you're fine with the rape. You're also fine with being burglarized.
I guess nothing's necessarily taken.
The peanut butter. He eats entire things of peanut butter.
I'm not sure you'd arrest anyone for eating a peanut butter, but it's another nail in the coffin.
It's creepy. They're breaking into people's houses as well. So even if you can excuse everything else, you're not safe in your own home. These people are breaking in and gassing you.
Yep.
What the hell, everyone?
I'm also going for the level of this tranquilizer, as we've talked about the X-Files playing fast and loose with medicine. But if something keeps you unconscious for 3 days, this is going to have a knock-on effect.
Yeah, that's not good. It doesn't sort of do Mulder and Scully that long, but I'm guessing it's meant to be the end of that period or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Again, I still love the hangover acting from both of them. They're really good at being wasted after this.
Well, as I said, it could have been a great episode. I love the way it's shot as well, and the music. It's very pretty. It has some good humour in it, but it can't escape that central premise that just ruins everything.
Yes. I say we head for the highway. Let's go to this military base, and we're going to crash the Scully family Christmas.
It's Christmas!
Yay!
In early November! Shame we couldn't save it till actual Christmas.
The timing of this would be really awkward. I mean, we're going to be doing the next Christmas episode in June, I think.
That far away, gosh.
Yeah, maybe Easter. I'm not sure where we're going.
Christmas and Easter!
Yay! I'm not sure where the Ghost of Stole Christmas is going to fall, but that's season 6. So that's going to be... Maybe it is. Maybe we'll be around Easter.
Yeah.
Okay, we are talking about Christmas Carol. Directed by Peter Markle, written by Vince Gilligan, John Shaban, and Frank Spotnitz. First broadcast on the 7th of December 1997. Guest stars. So we have Carrie Turner as Tara Scully, who is Bill's wife.
Oh, she has a name.
They do call her Tara at one point.
Okay, at one point.
there was one point where they say Tara. She was in the Get Smart film.
Okay.
She was also in 2 episodes of Carolyn in the City. A series I love to bring up because no one in the world has heard about this except us.
I've seen it.
You only saw it because
I've seen it because I met you, but yeah.
And no one watched it when it went out originally. That's not entirely true, but basically, And then you only want to watch the first 2 series because the third one, oh my god, what happened? That was bad. Anyway, the other guest of note is John Piper Ferguson as Detective Kresge, who was in X-Men The Last Stand.
Okay.
Tekken.
Oh,
Yeah, the first one.
I love Tekken. Did he play anyone of note?
Can't remember, I don't think so. He's in 2 films called Drive, one of which is the one we've seen with
Ryan Gosling.
He's in MacGyver.
Okay.
Sergeant Next Generation. He was in F. Emasculata. He's going to show up in Millennium. He's in Harsh Realm. Ha 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 ha. Oh, Chris, that one didn't work, did it?
Oh dear.
And he was in American Horror Story Roanoke.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that too. I actually have a guest actor in this one that you've missed off the list.
Oh, okay.
I have Zoe Anderson as Dana Scully, 1976.
Oh, okay.
Gillian Anderson's younger sister.
Ah.
Playing her 13-year-old self.
That's kind of cool. I think she didn't show up because she's presumably not an actress in any other capacity. And I pull them off of Wikipedia. Well, that's interesting.
I know,
Good.
right? I know things.
You do? So, on this night of peaceful Noel, actually it's the 21st of December.
It is the 21st of December, yeah.
So community all over again. Would you like to tell us about the 21st of December?
Certainly. 'Twas the night before 22nd of December. So we follow Scully and her mother Margaret, who are visiting Bill Jr. and his wife Tara. They are staying the holidays with them because Tara is expecting their first child. As they settle into Bill's home, which is on a military base, Scully answers the phone as it rings, only to hear a person on the other end who sounds an awful lot like her deceased sister Melissa. Melissa tells her that there is somebody who needs her help, and Scully traces the call to a nearby home in San Diego. She arrives there to find that the police are already investigating the suicide of the woman who lives there, Roberta Sim. Kresge, the lead detective on the case, also tells Scully that it's impossible that Roberta could have dialed, as she died long before the telephone call was made to Scully, and indeed he was on the site at the time and the phone was off the hook. After Scully becomes a bit despondent over dinner with her family, in which Tara keeps talking about the joys of her upcoming motherhood, Scully reveals to her mother that her slightly bad attitude is due to a combination of her abduction of cancer, which she has recently discovered means that she's unable to bear children. We see a flashback also to Scully as a child, an incident where Bill was bullying her and she hid a pet rabbit in her lunchbox to protect it, only to find that the rabbit had suffocated and died. During this flashback, she also notices a small child watching her from the staircase. The child is Melissa, but bears a striking resemblance to Emily, the daughter of Roberta Sim. Scully receives a second telephone call, again from the person who sounds like Melissa, and once again this phone call had been made from the Sim home. Scully speaks with Roberta's husband Marshall, who is meeting with two dark-suited men inside his house. He has no desire to listen to Scully and figure out what's going on, dismissing it as just an issue with the phone lines. Scully then visits the police station and speaks to Kresge. She wants to look further into Roberta Sim's suicide, despite the fact that Kresge doesn't think it's any more than that. She also finds a photograph of Emily in Roberta's belongings, which bears an even more striking resemblance to 3-year-old Melissa. Scully then has a slightly odd flashback or dream sequence to a funeral that she attended when she was a little girl. However, she imagines Marshall Sim holding her hand and sees Roberta's corpse floating inside the coffin. Scully insists on performing an autopsy on Roberta, still convinced that she's been murdered. She discovers on examining Roberta's stomach that there was no signs of any medication in her belly, despite the fact she had supposedly overdosed on painkillers to numb herself before she killed herself. She does, however, find a puncture wound in Roberta's foot, causing her to believe that Roberta had indeed been anaesthetized, and therefore her suicide was staged. As the police search the Sims' house, they find a used hypodermic needle in the trash, which Marshall claims was for daily injections for Emily, who suffers from some debilitating form of anemia. Scully also sees the same dark-suited men that she saw earlier, now watching the house from a nearby car. Scully orders a DNA test on Melissa and finds that it matches up to Emily's DNA results. They're nearly identical, and although it's only a 60% chance that Melissa is indeed Emily's mother, Scully is convinced and orders further tests. Scully has a theory that Melissa gave birth to Emily while on the West Coast, a time when she kind of went dark from her family for around a year, but for some reason gave Emily up for adoption without ever telling anyone else she was pregnant. Scully then has another flashback to when she and Melissa were teenagers and were given their crucifix necklaces from their mother for Christmas. Kresge begins to suspect that Marshall indeed did murder his wife. He tells Scully that the Sims received several large payments from a pharmaceutical company called Prangan Industries. The two of them visit a doctor there, Dr. Calderon, who tells them that Emily was part of a clinical trial and that Roberta was being paid money just to keep her from pulling Emily from the program. She had tried to do so once before, fairly recently, but Marshall withdrew all the paperwork. Marshall Sim is arrested for the murder of his wife, and Scully takes pity on Emily as she's bundled into a car and gives her cross necklace. Marshall quickly confesses, but is shortly after found dead in his cell after being visited by the two dark-suited men. Meanwhile, Bill shows Scully a photo of Melissa that she sent him around the time Emily was born, which clearly shows that she was not pregnant. He believes that this is proof that Melissa is not Emily's mother. Scully also meets with someone from the adoptive services because she wants to adopt Emily herself. The woman is very hesitant, considering Scully's job and the fact that Emily is a special needs child. She tells Scully that the FBI would have to take a back seat and that Emily would have to be her full concern. This is something that Scully has actually given deep thought to, and she is eager to proceed with the adoption. In a final flashback from before Scully joined the FBI, we see her discussing it with Melissa, who eases Scully's fears about taking such a big leap, leaving her medical career for the FBI, and encourages her to give it a go because she doesn't know where the journey will take her. On Christmas morning, Scully awakes and begins to open presents with her family when she receives the results of an RFLP test that she requested. This is the further genetic test on Emily. The test results do indeed prove that Melissa is not Emily's mother. However, Scully is.
Dun dun dun. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is a great example of why you don't go visit the family for the holidays, because no, I just suppose on the one hand, Scully's being a terrible house guest in this episode. On the other hand, no one has any sympathy for her at all.
To be fair, it's one of those awkward conversations. The one that's really grating is Tara's lengthy speech about how she didn't realise how her life was meaningless up to being pregnant in front of Scully, who she doesn't know is infertile. And it's one of those things that today we're a lot more sensitive about, I think, is the fact that you don't assume that everyone can get pregnant, because, these are kind of things that women are often very ashamed and very embarrassed about and don't talk about.
Unlike the Scully family, apparently.
Yeah, it's lucky that Scully's kind of made of stern stuff and just doesn't burst into tears at the table, I think.
I think she should punch Bill, though. Oh my god.
Yeah.
He's the worst brother in the world.
I said it back in Redux as I consider Bill to be the most slappable X-Files character, and my opinion as it remains unaltered.
He's just unbearable, isn't he?
I just hate him. I dislike him intensely. I don't think I'd go to... If he was my brother, I wouldn't be going to this house at all.
Oh no, Mum, I've got to go to work. I'm going to spend Christmas with Mulder.
He really doesn't understand Scully's career, though, and which is weird given he's a military man and presumably he has to be on call. Is he doesn't understand that it's kind of the same for Scully and she can't just turn off 9 till 5.
True, although, I mean, I don't know however it is that it's entirely her fault that she's not switched off, because she's actually meant to be on break.
She is, but at the same time, is an FBI job isn't a 9 till 5 job. It's not like she can just turn off her phone at the end of the day and go away.
True, but she's actively involving herself in this. Without her involvement, nothing would be happening. We'll mention quickly, because he's not really relevant to this episode, is that Mulder's not in this one. Not for the reason I thought, though.
Oh, it's because David Duchovny was off promoting a movie he was making at the time.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be his side of Unusual Suspects, and this would be him doing his stuff for the film. And no, it turns out the film's done by now.
Yeah, it was a different film that he was promoting. I can't remember what it was.
Playing God.
Playing God, that's it.
A film, I admit, I've never even heard of, so I'm not sure that was the best choice. Mrs. Scully is still really unsympathetic. I mean, are we trying to imply that she does blame Scully a bit for the death of Melissa? Given it was still her involvement in the conspiracy led to Melissa dying?
I don't really get that. Margaret Scully throws some tremendous shade, but I don't think she actually blames Scully for Melissa's death.
Well, I would like to think she wouldn't, but it's... I mean, we did talk about it a lot in Paperclip as well, that Scully's kept saying, I want to go to my sister's bedside because she's dying. And Will said, no, we must go do my crazy thing. And Scully went along with that.
It is kind of nice, because this episode is deeply personal for Scully, and Scully kind of as a mother is something that's been building since back in Home.
Yeah.
Really, just us trying to view Scully as something other than just kind of robot medical scientist is giving her this kind of human feminine side. And this is the absolute kind of pinnacle now we're getting into that plot of Scully actively wanting children, actively making an effort to adopt a child because she can't have one naturally.
But then, of course, we have the revelation that this is Scully's child.
Yeah, I'll say it now. We'll leave it for the moment, get through. I really like The Christmas Carol as an episode. I think it flows nicely and it's got a good mystery. But that twist is like something out of a sitcom at the end of it.
Yeah, I would say I don't think we need it. And it's probably not going to ruffle too many people's feathers that, part 2 is conspiracy. I mean, there are the foreboding notes of it in this episode. They're kind of subdued, but they're there if you're watching for them.
2 men in a white car.
2 men in a white car, the payments to keep the wife on side, Emily having some very weird medical complications.
It is a natural condition. I didn't write down what it was, but it is a kind of form of aggressive anemia. And it's inferred the fact that she might not live very long.
As you pointed out, our makeup department is lacking because she's the healthiest dying child ever.
Oh, especially anemia, something characterised by not having enough red blood cells, and she's got such a rosy face. She looks like a really happy, healthy, kind of perfectly normal 3-year-old girl.
Yeah. And the fact that she's adopted as well is significant, and we'll get onto that next week.
Yeah. But yeah, we build up on what the X-Files actually does best when it focuses on it of actually a crime procedural. Starting with this kind of vaguely supernatural mystery, harking onto the Scully Psychic Detective Agency once again, where Scully gets an impossible phone call, which leads her to a place where a woman has, at that point, looked like killed herself, but actually been murdered.
Yeah. There's some Scully Faith stuff, though, with the guy who's meant to be doing the autopsy is a bit too willing to toe the party line of, oh yeah, the pills were just dissolved, and Scully saying, no, I refuse to believe they could have dissolved that cleanly and that fast.
Maybe it's just Scully being better at science.
It could be. I mean, he's meant to be a kind of doddering old guy, isn't he?
Yeah, he believes it's a waste of time to begin with because he's already ruled it as a suicide.
Yeah.
He's looking for what he wants to see. And we've already commented, like, it was back in the conspiracy one previously, Redux, where they, or possibly Gethsemane, it was part of that arc, where someone said Mulder wouldn't have known that the body was fake, and he said, well, Scully would have known if she'd have looked at it.
Oh, that was Redux.
Yeah.
Rather than Redux 2.
Where, Scully is very good at her job and very competent.
Yes.
Apart from in First Aid.
We mentioned First Aid. I mean, it's good job she doesn't have to administer any of it.
I mean, she's only going to be taking care of a child with a severe medical condition who I'm sure won't need resuscitating at any point.
So I remember this one is, again, one of 20th Century Fox's publicity stunts, where you bought this as a tape of both episodes edited together again.
Oh, with Emily kind of edited into one long thing.
Yeah. And as we've noted on the previous instances where this happened, it's never a good idea because it ruins the structure of the episodes, because you have the build-up to the sting at the end of the cliffhanger, and then you have to resolve it immediately, and you're going, well, that was dramatically inconsistent, wasn't it?
Mm.
So it was never a good idea, but... So I watched all this all in one go. Emily is a very different episode to Christmas Carol. There's almost nothing... Aside from the ongoing plotline, they're almost two completely opposite episodes. One's a Monster of the Week episode, and one is something else.
Well, actually, this episode, Christmas Carol, was envisioned to be a strict Monster of the Week episode originally. Its title is The Christmas Carol because it was supposed to be a retelling of The Christmas Carol, putting Scully in the Scrooge position. Well, interestingly, the original idea was the 3 ghosts that would visit her would all be the ghosts of her deceased family members. Okay. Which is why we've still got the flashbacks in the episode. Because, that's your different ages of Melissa and Bill and things through these would have been her visitations.
Okay.
And the other one thing that we've kept in is Roberta Sim, or the Sim family's name is because of Alistair Sim, who played Scrooge.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are our random harkbacks, but those are the only vestiges you can see of this original idea to make a Christmas Carol episode.
Yeah, so... But you don't believe the adoption can succeed? Even before you get into part 2, which we'll have to do next week, the whole idea of Scully putting the FBI onto the back burner is incompatible with the nature of the series. As we know, she's not going to do it.
It depends. At this point, perhaps you could have argued she would, because we're thinking of the movie as potentially being the ending of the X-Files. At which point here, a third of the way through the final season, this could be where we're ramping Scully down to she'll leave the FBI in the end.
She's already been soft turned down already. Or the recommendation is a no, isn't it?
Interestingly, those kind of investigations actually take months. It happens over 2 days in the course of this. From what I read, and I'm looking at state of California laws here because that's where we are, although of course Scully doesn't live in California herself.
Which makes it difficult.
But you would have what you saw here of the application and the kind of interview backgroundy process that she has in this episode. But you'd also have something called the home visitation, where they'd want to, survey the natural environment the kid would be growing up in, which is the really lengthy progress. And of course she couldn't have that done here because she's not where she actually lived.
No, and hasn't even started to prepare for that. I did also think, and it's really cruel of me, but it's kind of bureaucracy works, is Gillian Anderson doing tremendous acting, but breaking down into tears during this interview, I think would count against you.
Because they're looking for a strong personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem to work in her favour in this episode.
Oh, it does, but I don't
the woman
think it should.
really sympathises. I think the big ones as well, that they say in the start, which are harsh truths that shouldn't be taken into account, but they comment on the fact that she's a single woman who's never held down a long-term relationship, is they're looking for nuclear families and stuff like that, which remains a problem to this day.
It does. And, heterosexual nuclear families as well, since there's a lot of stigma about gay and lesbian couples.
But I know from what I read online, the expedited adoption process in this is considered one of the biggest goofs in the episode, and there are some shining goofs in this episode when you look into it with
Well, yeah, I think we'll get onto those ones in a bit. Some very weird problems.
Mm.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, so going back to when you first watched this, I'm guessing you watched it over the air rather than on video.
Yeah, I saw it over the air.
So did you think Scully was about to fundamentally change your life for this, or did you not really think about the wider implications or forward implications of it, or just taking it as it was coming?
This was my first taste of the conspiracy, you're bearing in mind.
Oh, what an episode to start on the conspiracy.
I know, right? But I remember being deeply, deeply confused by this plot because I didn't have any of the background of why Scully was infertile, what happened to her previously, or anything like that. Because, of course, none of the novels... Actually, Dwayne Barry did have a novel, but that one is like gold dust and I never got hold of it. So I didn't even know Scully had been abducted by this point and things like that. But I also disliked it through a personal taste of... I, growing up as a kid in the 90s, hated the fact that women's plots all seem to revolve around wanting children, needing children, childbirth, looking after children. Scully is a different character, and I appreciated her as a scientist. Unlike the fact that Scully was more asexual, represented me more as a young teenager where, you're not interested in sex or children and all the rest of it. I didn't even like dolls as a kid. But then to immediately have Scully, 3 episodes after I start watching it, kind of thrown into this maternal plot, and I was ever so disappointed.
I can completely see that.
I just had in my head of her as this kind of strong, independent scientist. It's like, oh wait, no, she's another female character that's only concerned with children. Apparently, Home and the Post-Modern Prometheus are supposed to pave the way to this. Because they're the 2 episodes where people talk to Scully about childbirth and maternity and things like that, and Scully responds empathically with that. She sympathises. The plot of Home all involves around a dead baby and what Scully thinks is rape and turns out not to be. And ditto with the Postmodern Prometheus, where you have this sort of complex and deeply problematic plot with people being raped and wanting to keep their babies. Is you've got this undercurrent of women as mothers that's building up to Scully becoming a mother herself.
Yeah, although this episode has also then decided to hedge that by saying she already is a mother. Which feels like you've overshot what you were aiming for.
I feel it's more like a Christmas miracle at the end.
Yeah, though it's a weird Christmas miracle.
Well, it gives her what she wanted.
Well, no, it might do, assuming she can get through the adoption process.
Well, presumably, if you are proven to be the kid's biological mother, that gives you an edge.
Scully's a scientist. I found it kind of amusing that she's got her acetate sheets again. Because remember from Redux that she had her acetone sheet with the 2 like blobs on it that was going to be her cast iron proof of everything. And we said, Scully, if you show this, people are going to say, what is that? Have you just drawn this on the
acetate sheet is back, yeah.
The acetate sheet is back. But then it was the case of she's got Emily's DNA versus Melissa's DNA, and look, they match. And no, it's a 60% thing, but you've just overlaid them precisely, and you've proven that Emily is a clone of Melissa at the 3rd of the way through the episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna not say this 100% because I'm not a scientist and all the rest of it, but the way I'm reading that is essentially when 2 people have sex, that means you've got 50% of DNA coming from either side, so the baby is a mix of the mother and father.
Yeah.
So therefore, this should not overlay perfectly. You'd say there was a number of similar markers that would point towards it, and I believe they usually word it as being Melissa or a close member of her family or something like that. You can't point it to the person exactly when she's got a sister with the same parents and things like that.
Yeah, and it's because there's genetic variation even within the same family. So the whole it matches Melissa, but she's actually Scully's child is just what?
To be fair, they said it's a 60% chance it matches with Melissa, but it's just what we see exactly if they know this child is a clone of Melissa, or is Melissa on the basis of this.
So we know that time travel is possible thanks to synchrony, so it's not impossible. No, wait, she's dead. She's very dead. It's interesting that Melissa's life apparently has this actual convenient point where she could plausibly have gotten pregnant and had a child and given it for adoption, and the family would have not known about it, except Bill has the fatal flaw in that bit of evidence.
I'm not entirely sure why Melissa just randomly sent him a photo of herself labelled October,
No.
either.
It feels, I mean, it's really unfair kind of critique, but it kind of feels like the writers wrote themselves into a corner again at some point and said, right, we need to disprove this before we get to the climax, so it will actually, people aren't going to say, but it could still be Melissa. And say, oh, okay, so there's a video of her right in the middle of this time frame where she definitely isn't pregnant, that Bill has for reasons.
Yeah. Interestingly, the brand of that photo paper is the same as the photo paper that we saw in Unruhe. And we know from Unruhe that it's really, really sensitive to heat damage. So maybe that photo was just damaged in such a way we couldn't see Melissa was pregnant.
Ah, so it's warped her, so it's actually made her thinner than it should have done.
Yeah, let's say that, for example.
I mean, okay, to carry this on, because I'm pretty sure Melissa's wearing a dress she was wearing in Paperclip.
Maybe she just doesn't have many clothes.
She's a new age person who's really outgoing and dresses fancily and has all the kind of extroverted feminine stuff that Scully doesn't do. She can have more than one dress. But anyway, but that's a good point though, because surely Melissa would take this photo in the middle of this, not ignoring her whole family thing, and send it to someone, say, surprise, I'm pregnant, rather than surprise, I'm me. As you said, why did she send this photo to him or to the family home? Because her dad would still be alive at this point, so presumably she sent it to Bill Scully Sr.
I imagine her father. Well, we've seen her father. Bill Scully Sr. was very overbearing, but then again, so's Bill. So, of all your family members, I think I'd be sending it to Unseen Charlie. We'll hedge our bets, and he's better than the rest of them.
He does send Christmas presents.
He does. They have one Christmas present from Charles, who I've got to assume is the errant Charlie Scully.
Yeah, we'll get to you later, Charlie.
To be fair, at Bill Scully Sr.'s funeral, there is one couple, I think, stood there with a kid, and people have hypothesized that that's meant to be Charlie, because otherwise why would he be stood with the main family?
Well, close family friend, I think, would be the other way of looking at it.
Mm.
Hey, Mom, do you think maybe giving your kids crucifixes for Christmas is not the best plan?
I love the fact that Melissa looks so disappointed when she opens it.
Well, given she actually is a New Age crystal person, yeah, she's not going to appreciate that. I mean, obviously, Melissa has fallen out of Catholicism quite early on, because this is, 13, 14 they were at that point?
Scully is supposed to be 13 or 14. I'm not sure why it's not any more precise than that in the notes. I think Melissa's older than Scully, but not by much.
No.
They're close in age, but I've got a feeling Melissa's the older sister, and I'm not sure where I've pulled that from.
I like it, though, that Margaret said, I was your age when my mother gave me a crucifix. But Mel's a year older, so that's fine, apparently.
That's actually one of my goofs for the episode, because in Ascension, Margaret said to Mulder, I gave Scully that necklace for her 15th birthday. Evidently that was her second crucifix.
Guys of the X-Files, you meant to have, I know how TV production works, you meant to have this thing called the show Bible, where you write down all the different character stuff as it happens, so you can refer to it later, so you don't get this happening. What are you doing? Other than you thought, hey, Christmas presents, that'll be a great time to give her the crucifix so that she can give it to Emily, because that's what you give a 3-year-old.
As you mentioned the character Bible, I can tell you another one of my goofs.
Okay.
When Scully calls the phone trace, she says her badge number over the phone, and it's a different badge number to the one she gives in Toleco.
I mean, we have had this a few times. I wonder what was going on with the writing, really, that they kept on doing this.
You think it's fairly simple, because they must also have the prop badges, which presumably have their badge numbers on. So it's something you would have there and be able to check it.
To be absolutely fair to them, it's entirely possible that the offices where the writers work is not in the studio where they're filming. They could be two different locations, so maybe they're nowhere near the props department. But again, this should be in the show Bible. This is what it's there for. It
could be something that the actors would also note, though, because you've got that prop badge on you at all times, but you're saying a different number.
Yeah, but apparently no, because Gillian Anderson doesn't say anything. Has just gone with whatever she's been scripted in this one.
I'll give you my final goof as well, so I don't forget it as well.
Okay.
It's the autopsy report for Roberta Sim.
Oh, yeah.
States her date of death as being August the 9th.
Pretty sure she died on the 21st of December.
She's been in that bathtub a long time, apparently.
And it's remarkably good shape for that length of time, and
Which feels like an absolute blinding error in our prop department, given that you've got all the Christmas set dressings and that autopsy report.
Yeah, and it's not like they changed the script late on, but given you said this started off as a Christmas Carol
It's
episode.
always been called Christmas Carol. Yeah.
So why would you think that?
But yeah, they're my big goose for the episode. Like I said, there's just some incredible lack of detail. I guess a lot of it, I didn't notice until I read back over notes and kind of reviews at the time. But there are a lot of little errors in here, and they're kind of really frustrating ones that you think could have been fixed easy.
Yeah. I do think the nature of this as suddenly setting up a conspiracy episode, because it's not there yet, but it's got the hallmarks of something that's going to go down that helter-skelter shortly. And we know it does.
Got our Men in Black, a murder that's been covered up to look like a suicide, and then that background note of she was bunked off essentially because she was trying to stop this mysterious medical test being done on her daughter.
And the sealed adoption records.
Mm.
The fact that Emily was adopted into this family as well, and her past has been obscured.
Which we quickly learn is because she's Scully's baby, and there's evidently something shady going on there.
And I don't think it was a stretch of the time, and it's certainly not a stretch to extrapolate on it even now, that, hey, those shots in Ascension of Scully with her stomach either inflated or swelling gotta be what we're going for. And also you link in the fertility clinic stuff from Memento Mori.
It's kind of weird in a way that I'd actually forgotten about the scene of Scully's stomach inflating, but Mulder also discovered since then that they harvested all Scully's eggs, so why did they impregnate her and then nick her eggs?
Do you really think they understand how the conspiracy works even now?
Mm.
Well, I do remember back in the day that Scully's alien baby was a popular conspiracy theory.
Mm.
And it basically fell off shortly after season 2 because they didn't seem to do anything with it. So Christmas Carol did come out of left field because no one thought that was even a possibility.
Yeah, it would make more sense, because we know they have all these eggs that Emily was created in vitro, but now you mention it, yeah, we did see Scully pregnant previously.
Yeah, although whether that was meant to be weird science experiments by the aliens or the Japanese scientists who did this to her, because we've forgotten about the fact it was this Japanese scientist who did this.
Yeah.
Remember that? That was season 3.
We don't mention the Japanese scientist anymore.
No, we don't. What the hell was in the back of that train car, which we've really forgotten about? Yeah, I don't think Mulder's actually told Scully that he found her eggs.
He didn't. It felt dodgy at the time, but
It did.
I guess she was very sick at the time. As far as we're aware, Mulder's never brought this up.
No. I think he might have forgotten about
I think he even
this
took one as well.
I think he did.
He took one of the sample kind of test tubes.
Yeah.
He's just still carrying it in his pocket, waiting for the right time.
Well, it's really not doing the eggs any good, is it? I remember just the X-Files as a concept seems fine, but when you get down to an episode by episode basis, what the hell is wrong with this series? It's just all kinds of messed up all the time.
Mm.
This was light entertainment, apparently.
Christmas Carol had a lot of positive reviews, which I feel is justified. It's a good episode.
Anthony Anderson is doing a lot of good work.
But there was one critic at the time who did a side note where he said that although it's a good episode, he hates the fact that any episode focused on Scully always focuses on things being done to her, rather than her doing things herself. Which I think is a really fair argument if you look at all the Scully-centric episodes to date. It's always Scully is abducted, Scully is impregnated, or Scully is infected with a deadly disease.
Yes.
It's always something happening directly to her that affects her body in some way.
In terms of parental stuff as well, is Mr. Sim, because I don't think we get his name very well. Is he seems like the worst parent in the world?
His name's Marshall, but
Marshall,
yes, he does. I felt some of his reactions seem realistic, especially when Scully appears on his doorstep for the second time saying, "Hey, I've got another phone call."
Yeah.
It's like when he realistically acts like the bereaved husband, it's like, do you think I want to hear about this right now? Leave me and my child alone, you crazy woman.
I do like as well the procedural error that Scully uses to sort of get them to open the murder investigation, although it's one where you've kind of overlooked technology. Because the whole thing of the phone of the house has been left off the hook, so no one could have made the outgoing call.
Mm.
No one could call in. And then Scully points out, so how did he call the police? Did he call the police and then put the phone back off the hook?
Yeah, it is one of those little details that could potentially break a case.
Yeah. However, I'm going to throw into here though, is Scully, you own a cell phone. Mulder owns a cell phone. A lot of people in this series own a cell phone. You didn't have to use the house phone.
He evidently did, though, from the fact they used this to nail him.
Indeed.
I've got to admit, I wasn't clear in the episode if Marshall did actually murder his wife, or
No.
whether it was the men in black. Because Marshall admitted to it, but then when he admitted to it, Scully kind of said, no, wait, there's a lot of doubt here,
Yeah.
and completely changed her tune. And I didn't take from that if Scully's kind of realised that there's a third party.
It's not clear. I mean, maybe episode 2 will clarify this, but I'm pretty sure we're done with Marshall Sim at this point.
Well,
He's completely deserted.
Everybody's dead except Emily now.
Yeah.
He evidently knows something because he'd been, like, systematically withdrawing his wife's... I don't know what the word is, kind of his wife's request to end Emily's treatment.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what this treatment is. All we're told is that it's some kind of clinical trial for her particular rare kind of anemia.
Yeah. Oh, I suppose that's one bit that's always felt iffy to me. Is so the doctor is running this test on Emily because for a rare condition.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Are you, as someone running a medical trial, meant to prescribe drugs to the father of the test subject who you are not the doctor of?
Oh, that's true. It's specifically how they got this. I did write down what I think the drug is called. It was Duratriphan, though I did do a Google search and I couldn't find anything to see if it really is a drug. But in the episode, it's some kind of prescription medication for migraines.
Yeah.
And it's what they believe that Roberta overdosed on to kind of numb herself before she killed herself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it turns out that those kind of empty drug casings in her purse aren't what killed her, and she was actually injected with exactly the same stuff, which is a little bit confusing.
Yes, and also she had sample packets, but apparently he was prescribed the drug.
But presumably he was prescribed it in liquid form. I'm not sure what kind of migraine drug you inject.
Yeah.
But she had it in her bloodstream, but not in her stomach, so she must have been injected by it.
Yeah. So, as doctors, you don't pretend to prescribe drugs to the parents of your
Maybe he had a consultation too, though. I mean, he is a doctor. He could have gone in for headaches.
He could have. I mean, he just seemed to be a research doctor rather than a general practitioner or whatever the equivalent is.
I mean, I used to suffer from migraines quite badly when I was at university, and I had medication for them. And it doesn't work anything like the ones in this. I don't think they would have numbed you. At best, they take the edge off it. They don't make you kind of anesthetized or dopey or anything like that.
No, it's just a very weird detail.
And again, much like in her purse, they came in pill form. You know, it's not something you'd have to inject you with. It's not like it's insulin or something like that.
I mean, I think it feels a bit like they were strained on this one, and the fact that this did start off as a radically different concept. I mean, more so than some of the other rewrites we've seen. Is this one that basically started off as a kind of funny Scully as Ebenezer Scrooge and has morphed into, hey, remember the alien pregnancy thing we alluded to? Well, we're doing that.
Yeah. As I said before, watching this through as a teenager who wasn't really interested in babies and childbirth and being a mother, I was just bored senseless. But I do remember liking the first half of this episode, and I still do, because I think it's a good little murder mystery.
Yeah.
And I like the kind of mystery of the phone calls from Melissa. I even quite like the little flashbacks of Scully's childhood, because it's always nice to see a bit of her background.
It's kind of nice to see Melissa again. It's a shame you died so fast.
I've got to question with how many of her memories would Bill involve them killing an animal. But beyond that...
This is Bill.
You know, there was the garter snake previously.
Yeah.
And now there's the little bunny.
Yeah.
Which admittedly was a really, really unconvincing dead rabbit, because I think we spent all of our budget on the Great Mutato for this season.
Yeah.
I think completely blinkered. He can't see anything from Scully's perspective and seems to have no empathy for her whatsoever.
No.
He just wants this idyllic family Christmas and doesn't care what his sister's going on. Even though Mom appears to be the biggest gossip in the world and just keeps feeding the plot to Bill off screen.
Mom?
But, you know, Bill previously found out that she had terminal cancer from Mom, and now has found out that she's infertile from Mom. And Bill's kind of building his own bizarre psychological profile of Scully based on this.
And now she's got to attend Christmas parties with people she doesn't seem to know.
Or have any time for.
Or have any time for, yeah. I will emphasize with Bill a bit, as alluded to at the start, is this is meant to be a family gathering, and Scully has been run off and found a murder case.
I'm going to stop you empathizing with Bill when he points out the fact that Scully is trying to fill a void because she can't get pregnant. In
Oh
one
yeah,
scene.
oh no, I was defending him for the whole ruining their family Christmas. He doesn't deal with it remotely well,
It seems tragic to me that Melissa's life was cut so tragically short,
and he's kept on going.
and Bill is still there.
Could have had Melissa for all this. We could have killed off Bill in Anasazi. Wouldn't that be fun?
I hate him every time I see his face. And it's no disrespect to the actor, because he does a perfectly good job of Bill, to be fair. He makes him so detestable.
I don't think he's in it much more. I can't remember if he's got 4 episodes higher or...
It's just every time Bill enters the room, you think, oh god, what's he going to say now?
It's a good job Mulder isn't here. I'll just wait. Do we have anything else for this holiday season?
No, I think that wraps it up nicely. I mean, Scully's got the bestest Christmas present she could ever ask for, and we get to see how that's going to evolve in Emily.
Yeah, well, not your bestest Christmas present. Right now for her, yes, this is kind of what she wanted.
Recently?
Yeah.
She specifically says, I didn't know it was something I wanted till I couldn't have it. Which I often think is actually fairly true to being a woman, is often it is something that women think that they're not ready for, they don't want it now, and then the worst happens and you realise, well, now that's something I can never have. It's feels like a realistic kind of direction for her character to take.
That's true.
Because again, this is something that women don't talk about, but afflicts loads and loads of women. You just don't necessarily know it until you try to have kids.
Yes. And then I suppose then you've got the complication of you're not entirely sure, is it one person's fault? Is it both person's fault?
And at the same time, it's so drilled into the kind of collective unconscious that a woman's job is to have children and look after children, that it's very easy to see why women become so depressed because this basic thing about being a woman that they can't do.
Yeah.
Through no fault of their own as well. It's a really, really sad state of affairs, and, I think it's realistic to explore that for Scully. Unfortunately, teenage Kim was not into this. Teenage Kim was into science and aliens and monsters and didn't really care about the childbirth subplot.
Well, I think it's one of the things where you don't appreciate acting so much when you're younger because it is just a thing, isn't it?
It brings to mind, like, there's that scene in the League of Gentlemen series, like a skit with these 2 guys renting a movie, and they're kind of basing their judgment on the movies about how many deaths there are in them.
Yeah, and 7 doesn't have enough.
Yeah, not enough deaths in 7, that's it. But that was kind of, your teenage mentality, or at least my teenage mentality watching this, of where's the scares, where's the monsters, where's the murder? I haven't changed that much, admittedly, but
no.
At least now I can appreciate good character moments and things like that.
That's fair. Well, we have left on a to be continued, so next week we will have Emily being the follow-up.
And Kitsunagari, which is a follow-up to Pusher.
If you'd like to get hold of us in the meantime, our email address is thingsargettingstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, we are GetStrange42. On Mastodon, we are at GetStrange42 at universedon.com. And on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch podcast. Alternatively, and if you're not sick of my voice yet, you can also find me on Twitch TV, where my username is AdverseCamber42. I stream whatever I'm playing on the PS5 on Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT or Saturdays at 5 PM GMT. Our game of choice is currently One Piece Odyssey.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange, where we currently have a new bonus episode, which is us attempting to review the song Mulder and Scully by Catatonia, as much as we know about pop music.
Yeah, it's not a long post, but more will follow. This is just a taste of what you have to come when we finally get round to recording our Let's Play of the X-Files FMV game for PlayStation.
Yes. Before we tackle the other one for the PS2.
Yeah.
But we plan to do all the other non-TV and non-film X-Files ephemera on Patreon, so that'll include the novels, including the new one due next year, the young adult novels, trading cards, comics, the season 11 comics, and the classic comics.
Yeah, whatever we can get our mitts on.
And as we might find out if you listen to the bonus episode, this might even include the X-Files theme song single, which is going to be a tough one, I feel.
There are 3 tiers on our Patreon at different prices. You get different perks, but whatever level you pick, you will still have access to all of our bonus episodes, which will not be available by any other means.
Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember, we did this because we can.